Hello, this is Elaine from Antelopebeads, and I'm here to talk a little bit about wire and also show you a basic wire working technique making a coil. So let's start with wire. Wire is made out of all kinds of different metals. It's made out of brass, copper, silver. Very commonly used wire is a craft wire, which is color coded over copper. And it's a very soft wire. Copper is a very soft metal. We also have head pins and eye pins, two findings that are essentially wire with special endings, and those are typically plated over a base metal such as brass, and they're going to be quite a bit harder than the copper wire. The other thing about wire is we always refer to it in terms of gauges. And it's sort of counterintuitive because the bigger the number, 24 gauge wire, the smaller it is as opposed to an 18 gauge wire, which is a smaller number, but it's actually a thicker wire. One way to think about this is that if you have a tube that is a certain size, doesn't matter what, you can get more strands of the thinner wire inside the tube than you could the thicker wire. So again, the bigger the number, the smaller the wire. Okay, basic tools for wire working. Please see our video on tools for a little bit more information on these. We have a pair of flush cutters, chain nose pliers, flat nose pliers, and round nose pliers. And these are about all you'll ever need for wire working. Now I'm going to show you how to do a basic coil. Coils can hold components together. They can also be just purely decorative. In general, the bigger the component I'm going to wrap around, the heavier gauge wire I'm going to use. So if I wanted to make a decorative coil around this piece of cork, I would probably use something like an 18 gauge. So I'm going to go ahead and cut myself off a piece of wire. I've got a piece that's a little nicked here, so I'm going to get that out of the way. And I'm just going to start with about 6 inches. What I'll do is I'm going to hold the wire up against the leather. Got a longer piece down towards the bottom and about, inch and a half tail on the top. To start with, I'm just going to wrap that tail down and around the leather. I've made a little hook around it. And you notice that coiling is kind of a misnomer because I'm really almost going to fold the wire around the leather. And I'm going to come up and around. I'm going to come as close as I can to the preceding coil and keep folding and wrapping. I can tighten the coil to some degree, but it's really better if I keep it nice and even right off the beginning. Okay, and then maybe I'll take this little tail and finish my coil off up to the front. And typically what I'm going to want to do is make my cuts to the back of my piece. So I'm going to cut, okay, and now I do not want these ends to poke the wearer, so I'm going to take a flat nose or a chain nose plier and I'm just going to press those in a little bit, okay, and my last step will be to run my finger across the coil and make sure it's not going to scratch me before I consider it done. So there's a basic decorative coil on a piece of leather. Okay. If I was going to use something a little softer like the lycra ribbon, and again see our video on lycra ribbon for more information on this really cool product, I think I'm going to maybe use a 22 gauge. It's sort of medium thickness for this, and again I'm going to cut a little piece. Okay. Now the lycra ribbon, this is nice and hard and firm and it's easy to coil around. This is going to be just a little bit trickier. So, but I'm going to use the same technique. I'm going to put my wire across the ribbon with about 1.5 inches of tail. I'm going to go ahead and fold it over. Now I'm going to really have to kind of manage the ribbon. You notice I'm kind of pulling it with one hand as I'm coiling it. and really working as, because the Leica ribbon is also really soft, to keep that coil nice and even as I go. I can actually rotate the ribbon if that helps me do the coil. And when I get the size I want, I'm going to make my cuts, cut out those tails, and again I'm going to always cut them to the same side. Use my chain nose or flat nose pliers to pinch in the ends. Rub my finger along it to make sure it's nice and even. Now here I have a little gap in my coil, and so I can take my chain nose pliers and just kind of push that in a little bit so it's a little closer to being even. Again, this is a tricky product to coil around, and feel free to have it be sort of more of a free-form coil. It doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. Okay. The last thing I'm going to show you is how we can actually design with coils. I've got here 2 pieces of 3mm leather and a Gazuri bead. Again, I think I'll take a piece of 22 gauge wire, and I'm going to start by making a coil around one side of the leather. I'm going to hold the wire, wrap it around, and make just 1 or 2 coils here, just enough to really hold it in place. That's probably plenty. I'm just going to cut off one tail, maybe go ahead and pinch that coil together, run the bead through the wire, and then I'm going to make a coil on the other side. I'm going to hold the leather right up to the bead, coil it around, a couple of times should do it. In this particular case, I'm just looking to hold it in place. Cut the tail off, pinch it in. Now I've got a bead that is sort of holding 2 pieces of wire separated, and I can make a little bracelet design by going ahead and coiling these 2 wires together right here. So again, I'll take a piece of 22 gauge wire, and I will hold these together at the point I want them to touch. Put this tail up here, get it started. You feel like sometimes you have 3 thumbs when you do this, but with a little practice you're going to get better. Wrap that around. There we go. Cut off the tails on whatever I decide is going to be my back. Pinch. There we go, do the finger test, that feels good. And then I'd repeat this on the other side, and then I can use a cord ending and I'll have a bracelet with a nice little bead centerpiece. Here's another sample of what you can do using that same technique. This bracelet was made with 2mm leather, 24 gauge wire, and what we did in the center was to wrap the 2 pieces of wire together, string a 12mm sea glass coin bead on, coil on the other side, and then I actually spread the middle out, brought this side in and did a coil up here, strung a bead on, another coil down here, and then I just added some decorative coils down the side, and I can finish this with a flat leather clasp, 5mm flat leather clasp. Hope you've enjoyed this information today. Please go to antelopebeads.com to see more videos and some really exciting products, and thanks for your time.